This conference will now be recorded.
Cool. So my fiber is on container 71, and I've seen tracking information been let out for one person on 71. So I'm hoping that it'll be here in the next couple of weeks and I can get started on it. We've created a group and we're already talking about questions, um, and that kind of stuff, trying to prepare for the onslaught that's about to happen when we pull the trigger on this thing. So it's coming.
What group? I didn't know about no group.
Do you have a fiber?
No. Well, I would
Except,
if you guys would just drop one in my driveway.
well, I've heard that once or twice. So yeah, luckily they're going to drop one in mine. So I'm not officially a part of the group, I guess, until I get my hands on one. But we put together some people that have some that are Thunder owners that also have fiber, even though they're not Thunder fiber, if they have the same source,
Oh, okay.
use the same EasyCAD too, so that we can try to glean some information from them, and be proactive about it instead of reactive. So
So just let me
that's
know what day it's going to be showing up at your house, and I'll just drive by.
that works.
I'll
That
make
works.
sure I'm driving a U-Haul.
I'm hoping it. They said mid to late July, but everything's been dropping 2 or 3 weeks early. Not everything, but some things have. And it's a smaller box. I mean, they might go, let's get that little thing out of the way. We can just go ahead and toss it on.
Yeah, that's right. They are a lot smaller, aren't they?
Yeah, they're smaller. And they only pull about 10 amps. So you could take them to trade shows, get you a BOFA extractor, and take them to gun shows and stuff, and set up a booth. You know, so I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So, how's everybody doing?
Good.
All right. Cool, cool. Uh, well,
Quick
the
question.
primary purpose of this is if you have questions or comments or anything like that, or just want to start a little roundtable discussion about anything pretty much related to lasers in some way, just feel free to go for it. So,
Can anyone hear me?
I can. How are you?
Okay,
Yes.
great. Pretty good. I was on here a while back, and someone had posted, and I can't find it for the life of me. Thought I had it saved in my bookmarks, but it was a air purifying system. It was like a big silver stand-up.
Oh, the Apex, I think. Wasn't that it, Jeremy? You sent me, you hit me back up on that thing. Let's see if we can find it.
Yeah, let me figure out what it was called now.
I think it was Apex something or another. We'll find it. We'll find it during the thing, and I'll pop it here in the chat, and that way you'll
Anyone
have a
using
link to
that,
it.
or anyone?
Somebody that was on here had one, and that's kind of how that discussion got started initially. I think. I honestly don't remember who that was though.
I only got the fiber laser right now, but I was just wondering if it just take that fumes out of the air. I have it set up in a spare bedroom right now instead of venting out the window all the time,
Right.
or if it's raining.
Yeah. I'm not so sure if that's an application specific device like a fume extractor that would be built for lasers specifically.
Gotcha.
We have a line of extractors that are made for lasers, but we're referring everybody, at least the Thunder USA customers, we're referring you to BOFA.
Both.
They're one of the industry leaders, and Fumex is another one. But we're starting to develop a relationship with, and Jeremy just posted that Axiom Stratus link in the chat, so you can check that one out too. But we honestly, I've never even touched one, and we don't feel confident supporting those extractors that we know little about. So we'd rather send them to a reputable U.S. distributor of that kind of thing,
Gotcha.
just because.
Ooh, pricey.
Yeah, they are pricey, and they're
Awesome.
not inexpensive to maintain really either. So there's some residual expense there with the filters and such, depending on the environment and duty cycle and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, exhaust too out the window sounding better every day.
It does, doesn't it? I don't. That's why I don't mind drilling. Well, I've got 3 right now. I'm getting ready to go for 4 holes in my brick, so I'm fixing to pop another one.
Gotcha.
What you need is out the window and just make you a little, like a plate that fits in there and keep adding to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Hey,
looking for something, see if they had anything that like that, like the old fan or little window fans, if they had something just with a where you could connect a tube or something and pull the window down on it.
right. You could probably stand the smoke long enough to cut you an adapter to sit in the window,
Mm-hmm.
and something that'll accept the fan, and you could just stick the fan into that hole and then plug your flex tubing onto it,
Right.
to
First,
It's
grapple or
super
something.
bad, but it's like, I have to turn the ceiling fan on and open up the window and it clears out pretty quick.
Gotcha.
But it's just like, I'd rather
Yeah.
just have.
Make sure that you have enough intake air also. And we've talked about it in the laser environment, but I worked a house fire one time and they had shag carpeting and one of the bedroom doors drug on the carpet and made a real good seal. And that room caught fire. It had an electrical fire and it was contained to that room because it wasn't able to get any air and it choked itself out. Same thing can happen if you don't have whatever cubic feet per minute of intake air coming into the room, then of course you're gonna impede your outflow as well. So make sure you got plenty of fresh air coming in.
I leave the door open, so it sucks from the rest of the house.
Right. And
Brian, you're
Patrick,
using the S8, right?
I'm sorry.
You're using the S8 or the S10?
I'm using the S6 actually. I got it, before everybody really started putting them on. And I got the 6 just because it matched up to the thing. It does okay for me. And all of these DC fans, they spool up a little slower than those cap start centrifugal fans. So there's some residual smoke at the very beginning. And once it catches up, it moves more air than the stock fan does, by a little bit. And there's a comparison chart somewhere I made, on the support site that shows the CFMs.
I did the S10 and I did 10-inch all the way to the laser, and then I did obviously downsize. I'm seriously considering putting a Y in line though, because I have a 63. And as you know, when the door hinges, that back panel, the half of that back, I can just cut a hole on the top of that, stick another sucker on top of that, and you're sucking air out of the top and bottom. I'm just
and
trying
put
to
blast
avoid...
gates on it and control it even. If you're engraving, use the top one. If you're cutting, use the bottom one. That's not a bad idea because AP does something similar to that on their exhaust.
Yeah, so I'm
They go
seriously
right through
considering doing that. Right now I'm using that room for storage for my jigs, so I'm gonna have to find a better solution for that. But speaking of ventilation, kind of I think related, on my 63, so my 63 is fairly new. I've not put a lot of work through it. I've been just tinkering a bunch, kind of dialing in all my settings, my library settings. But I'm hearing something odd now, where that is my belts are creaking a little bit, almost like they're getting stiff, especially the X axis on the side there. It's a little odd. Have you seen anything like that, or?
Yeah, mine do that all the time because I've used it very little. And it creaks and sounds like something's grinding, like a bearing's going out and all kind of stuff. And then you let it run a little while and it smooths back out.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I was thinking like either is it smoke is kind of sitting on there lingering and causing it to dry out, or is it just dry rot like in a car tire from not being used?
Yeah, I think it's just that everything sits, and just, I don't really know, but I know when I run mine a little bit, then it squares away. If I run it daily or every other day, I don't seem to notice it.
Yeah.
And I don't put a lot of use on mine either, but I've had it about 2 years and I haven't seen any indication that there's any premature wear or anything of the
tighten your
belts.
belts in the 2 years you've had yours?
No. Matter of fact, I've only seen 2 people on the groups ever tighten their belts, and they quickly submit a ticket and then go back to loosening them back up. But you have to be careful of that because, the belts
Throws everything
in there,
off.
once you tighten them up, you stretch those. So even when you loosen it, you'll never get it back to where it was, ever, 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 if you really crank down on them. So, yeah, it's best to not fix it if it ain't broke. But
yeah, I was just curious if that was a thing that people did every year, every 5 years, whatever.
Nah, and I would expect the scanning offset values to change as the belts stretch and relax and things break in. But I've never had an instance that I can recall where somebody said, "Hey, my engravings are fuzzy now, and my scanning offsets are off again." Now I've had it happen when you replace a motor or something, just just because.
That's the
But
nature of
throughout
it.
normal use, and we've got machines that are 10 years old out there, you know, and you'd think by 5 years, if there was going to be any change in those, you know, the personality of the machine, I guess you could say, of the motion control, that you would see it, and we haven't. So that tells me that all of those motion control systems are pretty solid. So
That's pretty awesome. I was looking at a CNC. I was looking at CNCs a while ago when I was considering a laser or a CNC, and I noticed that obviously some CNCs run off belts, just like Thunder does,
mhm.
but there are some that run off of screws, where you know what I'm talking about. So,
Right.
is there any benefit to that mechanism over a belt, or like has Thunder considered that?
I I don't know. I think the belts. I think using lead screws, you'd never get the speeds or the
No.
acceleration that you would need out of it. That's just
Gotcha.
too much bulk there in that transmission system. I
Gotcha.
think is why the belts are normally the sought after way,
Uh,
especially on the
uh,
long
yeah, I was
runs.
just curious about it because you're right. A CNC, the head of the CNC actually moves a lot slower than a laser will,
Hmm.
right? I mean, because of the feed speed. Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I think if you're confined to lower speeds, it would probably be fine. If in cutting, which in CNC, that's usually what you're doing. It's more of a cutting, you know. But this one, you know, flipping back and forth at 1,000 millimeters per second, you know, plus the belts act as a little bit of a buffer, you know, because they have to slow down and make direction changes. And if you had a hard connection there, like you would with a lead screw,
That would
you know,
jam up pretty hard.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'd say it probably wouldn't be a good fit, you know, going over a certain speed. So,
that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. And I definitely like the belt over the packed rails because those are I've used that for 3D printers, and
mhm.
those get nasty fast, man.
Yeah, yeah, I like them, and they seem to hold up too. The bearings do. We have to replace some bearings every once in a while, but as a whole, um, they seem to hold up fine, and they're maintenance free. That's what I like about them, because some of the other machines, they have linear bearings, but they package them or conceal them in a way to kind of keep the debris away. So they mount them actually inside the hollow gantry, and then they use a
Okay.
big wide belt to cover the whole front, which is fine and dandy, but it still gets dust and it still has
Yeah.
toothpaste in
Now
there
it's
for grease.
inaccessible. Yeah.
And right, exactly. When you finally do, no matter how long it takes, have to go clean it out, you got to tear the whole thing apart to get to it. So
That's a pain in the butt.
yeah.
Speaking of maintenance, I was looking at the maintenance checklist. You know, weekly, monthly, so on and so forth. I'm cleaning my lenses before every day, pretty much before I run it, just in case. But oiling the actual gantry, I look at it, and these are bearings, these are wheels running off of on the gantry, right? And the wheels
Right,
are self lubricated. So
right.
what are you oiling?
The reason they put that in the manual is because they press those steel rods into that aluminum gantry, and there's dissimilar metals there, and you can get corrosion. So that's more of a protectant than it is lubricant. But I wipe
Gotcha.
mine down with a like a terry cloth rag or a microfiber
Yeah,
cloth, dampen it with a little machine oil, and you know, and just wipe it down. But I've
yeah,
never
like a
seen one with
3-in-1
corrosion
old
on it. But I
school.
think that's
Yeah.
why they have. I think that's why they have that in there.
That, as I was wondering, I'm like, wait, what am I lubricating? Because I do
Right.
maintenance on my 3D printers, and I see the friction point there, but I'm
Hmm.
like, wait a minute, what is the friction point? There is
Yeah.
no friction point here. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. So
You guys have any concerns with Thunder being in China with some of the stuff going on as far as political crap? I mean, as far as does that ever affect manufacturing?
you mean like the tariffs and all that kind of stuff
Yeah, I
that
mean,
that
the
have been
tariffs I think they
just in
dropped, but
general?
there needs to be other stuff going on. They're getting pissed off at them about the having those prisoners of war, or not war, but how they're treating those people. I don't know what Biden's going to do, or if that'll affect anything
Yeah,
coming into the country, or
the political landscape, at least from my seat, dealing with them directly, is not overlapped. I mean, we don't see nothing has really changed. The attitudes haven't changed that I can tell. So, you know,
not
it,
really business to business. It's
yeah,
more
yeah,
political to
B2B, it
political.
really, yeah, but it's been real smooth, and I haven't seen any negative repercussions that I know of, you know, that are out of the ordinary anyway. So, All right.
How often should I expect to have to top off my my chiller? I noticed I
Um,
lost about 20%. It was right at the top of the green,
mhm.
and I've lost about 25% liquid. After I ran it a couple times, I still topped it off to the top of the green. How often should I expect to have to top off the chiller?
Officially in the PM, I think it says to check it once a month or even, exchange the water once a month. I'm running on 2 years.
You
So,
never had to top it off? Wow.
no, you may
Yeah,
want
he
to, you
doesn't
may
he
want to,
doesn't use it much though, right?
yeah,
Okay.
it's a closed system. I mean, if you do, there is a little bit of evaporation. Now you may want to check yours. You may want to look for any evidence of any drips or anything. You may have something where it's not real evident, but it may not hurt to follow those chiller lines around inside and outside the machine and just make sure everything's okay.
I do have longer hoses. I don't know if you remember, but I was asking about extending everything to put everything on the right side.
Hmm.
So I have about 7 or 8 feet worth of hose
Hmm.
outside the machine going to the right side. So I'm assuming the hoses over time from pressurizing will expand a little bit, therefore having a little more space for liquid.
They
Maybe a
possibly
tiny bit.
could, maybe a tiny bit. I don't know how evident it would be.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I was just curious. I checked for any leaks. I actually have electronic leak sensors underneath the laser for that reason.
nice.
So just I got nothing. I looked inside, I got nothing.
Okay.
So I was just curious if that was normal or not. I'll keep hunting down for something.
Yeah, and there may not be anything wrong. It may just be some evaporation and expansion and air bubbles working their way out and crazy things like that. But typically that happens pretty much instantaneously because I think I forget these are 13 liters a minute or something like that. And I'd
Yeah,
calculated
it's
the
pretty nuts.
volumes actually. Actually, I've got an article on it. Let me find it
And this
real
is
quick.
the 5300, I think, because it's for the 63 130.
And where did all my buttons go?
I've seen it in other applications where you will get, due to temperature swings, you'll get the expansion and contraction in your
Yeah.
water, and you will actually lose a slight bit of seeping through the
Oh,
hoses. Like even rubber pressurized hoses we use on VFDs, we run into issues where we put them out in the desert or we put them out in a very cold stream, and we would start to get low pressure alarms. And we don't have any
Interesting.
visible leaks, but we determined that after a bunch of effort, we realized that a long time ago we went to a certain type of steel braided hose, right?
Hmm.
Because it solved that problem. And when you go into cost out initiatives, that expensive steel braided hose, and you go back to more of a traditional rubber hose, that it will actually leak a little bit over time.
interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these aren't, I don't know how much, accuracy is involved here, but I try to calculate the volume that the tube actually, because the outside casing of the tube doesn't have water in it. It's just the inner core. So I tried to get that pretty close. But this is approximately what the coolant system, assuming you're using the 1 meter coolant lines, should hold. So that ought to
Gotcha.
get you in the ballpark.
Yeah, I remember I reached out to you because according to the recipe of what to put in the water on
Hmm.
the article on there, it said 5 gallons. So I was expecting to put 5 gallons in, and I'm like, whoa, I'm at
Yeah.
like 4, and
Yeah.
I'm way
So
full.
that article was adapted from Laser Gods, which dealt with K40s, and they have an open loop system that's passive, and it's a 5 gallon bucket with a sump pump in it, and that's your
Yeah,
cooling system. And
and
dropping ice
that's why
buckets
that
in, and
that number threw me off.
yeah,
I had it already. I'm like, what is happening right now? So I reached
right.
out to you, and you're like, oh yeah, we forgot to update that. It's really not 5 gallons.
Yeah, I still don't think I changed that. I'll make myself a note to go in there and make sure it's accurate. So,
Yeah, we baby the laser. We built a whole spot for it, and have a ductless mini split unit
hmm,
set up. So this room is always at a maximum 7 degrees, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and
yeah,
at a minimum of 65. So
nice.
it's between 65 and 70 constantly.
Right. Yeah. That's perfect because if you're comfortable, the laser's comfortable. Is the general rule. So, and you can keep
Yeah,
yours in intelligent mode. See, I've got to run my chiller in constant mode, constant set point, because they come defaulted in intelligent mode, which means it'll maintain a temperature within 5 degrees of the ambient temperature, which is perfect for
okay.
a conditioned space. but
Gotcha.
it gets 90 degrees in my shop at night,
Yeah,
you know,
not good enough.
and it'll hit the high alarm before it ever reaches that range of, getting
Oh,
up there. So
yeah, I never tinkered with the cooler actually, or the chiller to change that, so I'm glad that that works out. I'm really glad I put in the inline desiccant or water separator
mhm.
because, man, when it got really hot, I'm up in the Pacific Northwest. We hit 116, 119 last weekend or the week before, and for some reason the humidity just skyrocketed.
Mhm.
And man, I turned on the laser and the air compressor, and there's an open port at the bottom of that air separator, or the water separator. I never knew it, but it just started gushing out water,
Yeah.
and it's like, what the heck is happening? Sure enough, it was removing all the moisture from the air.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
Are you
I'm really
using
glad
the
I did that.
Calier compressor?
I'm using the really high end quiet one. It's like 40 dB in
Okay.
noise level, and it has an air dryer inside. It's got that stack.
Oh, okay. That's the
Um,
enclosed one. That's the
yes,
the
the
high duty
enclosed one.
cycle one.
Yes,
Okay.
high duty cycle enclosed, and it has the automatic cycle. Every 60 seconds, it busts out some air to get the moisture
Mhm.
out of the tank, and it has that vertical metal flue. It looks like really it's like a chimney
Mhm.
flue almost, but it makes all the moisture kind of drip down the sides of it and just spits it out. But even with
Gotcha.
that, the separator in line after it was
Still had.
still
Yeah.
gushing out water, and it's a three-stage separator. The last stage is desiccant. Well, the desiccant beads went from beautiful blue to like bright pink almost
Yeah.
instantly. So it could not handle all the moisture. It just could not handle.
Yeah, that's crazy. You've got good systems in place there because I've got a little 8010, the little cheap Calier,
Yeah.
and that thing, I think sometimes I think it's distilling water instead of pumping air. It's it's insane because the pistons are so there's not a lot of surface area in there, and it could just get so hot. So
hmm Yeah, this thing works amazing. I mean, it was expensive as all get out, but it's. I feel better knowing that, I've not gotten any liquid at all on my lens. Not, I
mhm,
mean, knock on wood, right? Like, but yeah, it's been solid.
good. Yeah, moisture's a killer, that's for sure, to that ZNSE. So
I love that pressure gauge, by the way, Mod, that you posted about. The first one that was linked on Amazon was a vacuum meter, but
yeah,
the actual pressure one works awesome. That thing, it lets me take notes on all my projects and exactly how much pressure I use, even dialing it in live to see what I
mhm,
need. It's
right.
it's awesome.
Yep, they're neat. And that they used to come on the Mars series machines. Mars is a legacy series. It's a lot like the Nova. The Nova was built off of it, and they came on there as standard equipment so that if you had zero airflow, it would interrupt the signal to the laser. They had it hooked up
Big
to the
time.
laser power supply so it wouldn't fire if there was no air. That's problematic for a lot of people, especially if you're trying to engrave
Acrylic.
acrylic and trying to
Yeah.
get down real low or turn it off, and then it shuts you down
Yeah.
unexpectedly. So I don't even have mine connected, but it's a neat feature if somebody wanted that. If you were in an
Yeah.
environment where you're cutting MDF blanks all day long,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'd turn that sucker on at 10
Yeah.
psi for the cutoff and leave it. You
Yep.
know, so
Yeah, it mounted really good too in there. And by the way, your tip about grabbing that 24-volt lane for the LEDs worked beautifully. And actually, I meant to send you pictures. The pictures you have are out of date. The newer version have a different type of connector. So
okay,
what I ended up doing is just undoing that the crimp in the connector for the individual
mhm,
nodes, and then recrimping it with the inline power for that
gotcha.
meter. And then
Yeah,
it
I
just
know
went
which
right back
connectors,
in.
those black 2-pin connectors.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, they're the same
Yep.
ones that are on the new relays because they switched out air relays too. They went to another brand air relay. So
Yeah, so that worked out great. Just being able to recrimp those terminals and off to the races we go.
cool. All right. Well, if anybody else has anything, like I said, feel free to jump in if you have any questions or comments. Uh, as usual, I don't have anything scripted. So
Well, I got plenty I want to talk to you about. So if people want to listen,
okay, cool.
if
Go
not,
for
just
it.
jump in and interrupt me. Like, just please, by all means.
Go
Um,
for it.
by the way, thank you for that Ruida controller that got here just in time. You shipped it out to me. It got here Monday,
Okay.
and it figures I was I was about to laser my wife's birthday gift, right when it freaking died.
Oh boy.
And but I was able to manually run it off the computer and execute it that way. So that worked out great. The mod that's been posted about in the group a bunch with the metal nozzle coming off to the side and giving it
Yeah,
that
the
surface
LO
area.
nozzle. Hmm.
Yeah, that thing is awesome. So I got it. I got the long tip one, and I lined it up so that it's basically filling the space that the focal point height would be anyway.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's right next to it. And then I did what you recommended actually, which was crimp it down to be flat. And yeah, it's just it shoots a
Did you
sheet
see a
of air.
difference by doing
Oh yeah,
that?
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Okay. All right, good.
definitely.
Because I haven't
And
done mine yet.
not only that, it makes the nozzle height smaller, where it's almost exactly 6 millimeters, which is what
Okay.
you're focusing at anyway. So you can almost use that as your focal point, where
Hmm.
you lower and raise the bed until that's barely touching or just above touching,
Just above.
and
Yeah.
now you are focused and you've got the air nozzle in there.
Sweet.
And
And there's a break on it. So if something did happen
yes,
and you come up too much, it'll at least fold over because it's just ball joints. So,
exactly. Not only
okay.
that, that same company also sells. Actually, the picture you're looking right there. That
Hmm.
white elbow, they
Okay.
sell a replacement for that white elbow that has a dial in it to
Hmm.
raise or lower the pressure. So
Hmm.
I replaced all of my laser heads or my laser tubes, um, optical tubes, to have that, so I can raise or lower
Gotcha.
it. I know you ran a second line and second air
Hmm.
line, so you can choose between high and low.
Right.
I just kept the single line and did a Y split, and then I can choose before I do the job. I can dial it up or down, or do a little
Gotcha.
bit of both.
Okay.
And that's
Sure.
been working fantastic.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, Light Object, I don't know if they're really competition. They sell lasers, like full built lasers.
I saw that.
But a lot of their stuff is DIY builds, and
Yeah. Hmm.
parts, specialty stuff. And, Marco does a lot of uh, experimentation and stuff. But we've actually developed a pretty good alliance. I was able to get a discount code for Thunder Folks. I don't know if you used it or not,
I
to
did.
get
I
some.
ordered a crap ton of this stuff from them, and the code didn't go through. They gave me a credit for next time I purchase. They applied it to
Gotcha.
my account, so next time I purchase, I
I
get
see.
that towards something else.
Yeah, because it only
Um,
applied to certain things, but
mhm.
it turns out he says that quite a few people are actually going through there. So I think he's expanding it to cover some stuff that maybe it didn't before. Because I know
Cool.
it covered tubes and power supplies and things like that.
Yeah,
Maybe it didn't cover the $20 items or something. You know what I mean? They have different tiers, so
I
maybe
love that
he's
it
playing with
matches the
that a little
Thunder
bit.
color too. The adapter, it
Yeah,
matches the Thunder color. That's pretty cool. I really
yeah,
like that.
yeah. I think most of the
It's
parts he
silly, but
gets are blue. A lot of them are because his colors are blue. He's
oh,
got blue in
cool.
his, so
That's
it's
perfect.
probably coincidental, but yeah.
I dig it. I really dig it. I know it's stupid. It doesn't help. It's it's just the visuals, right?
Right.
But it's form over actual delivery. But I like it. I like my laser to match up like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Red wouldn't do. Red just wouldn't do.
That I would have probably spray painted it if it were red. Like,
So, but yeah, I've used this a little bit and it seems good, because when I was building K40s, I'd use a piece of copper brake line, 3 millimeter brake line, and actually just shove it on the hose, and wire tie it around the head and bend it over. And Epilogue uses an air assist similar to this. ULS does. The conical nose is good for cutting, but
yeah.
not so much for engraving. So I really like being
And
able
I
to get
saw the
that.
really big open nose to the big, just wide open orifice, and I was
Hmm.
worried that it would cause like a windmill effect of
Hmm.
air, where it would actually suck in the smoke if you hit it at the right angle, and
That's
then you would just
possible.
yeah. So I like this way better,
Yeah.
and I always leave it a little bit open, so there's always a little bit of a breeze coming out of that nozzle, but that's just to make sure for sure we can't get any smoke in there, and
Right.
then you have the sheet of air just coming across it. It works really well.
Yeah. And honestly, I turned mine up a pretty good bit, because it blows most of the debris clear off the back, if it
Yeah.
doesn't stick. So, and it doesn't really affect the contrast that bad. Not like it would if you were shooting straight down into it.
One
So
thing I did notice though is if you're using masking, it will blow the masking right off.
that's a good
So
point. That's a good
I had
point.
to dial it down a bit. But that's the
Yeah,
benefit
especially
of
if you're gonna
having.
spray, if you're gonna paint, if you're or infill after, you definitely don't want
Hmm.
that to come off of there. So
Yeah, yeah. So I had to just kind of balance that out, and then It works awesome, man. I definitely saw a difference. Even with slate, where you get a little bit of debris on there, that's huge. But I also saw it with acrylic too, because you know how you get that buildup of acrylic under the nozzle.
Hmm.
This doesn't let it happen. Even if you put it on light, it doesn't let it happen at all. It's
Yeah,
pretty nice.
yeah, because
Hey, have you tried it? Do you have the Beam Buddy high res lens by chance?
I have the Beam Buddy high res lens. I have not tried it with it, but I can tell you it'll likely not fit as well because it's already about 6 millimeters in height. So I put mine, I mean, literally right next to it. Actually, I might get up and get it here in a second. So you're going to have to point it down at an angle. And when I did that, I found that it didn't disperse the smoke as well as if you were right beside it.
now you could step back from it maybe a little bit and actually shoot in, and kind of just
Like
get it
shoot
through
at
there
the
because
side of it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because you only got 3 millimeters there. You could probably fill that entire space with air. You could probably
Well, that's what I
positive
was
pressure
that's
yeah.
what I was thinking, and keep it from building up so bad. I hate using that thing just because it gets so dirty so
Oh, it
quick.
does. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And another thing I noticed is if you're not perfectly lined up beside it, if you're engraving off to the edge of something or down close, where that nozzle's coming off of the edge of it, it'll actually hit the side of your workpiece and not get any air across the top of the workpiece. And that made me really dial it in so it's perfectly aligned. So even if it's off the edge of a workpiece, it's still getting across it because it's aimed properly. It's not bouncing off the workpiece.
What position did you put it at? Did you put it at like a 5 o'clock position, 6 or 3?
Yeah, so actually the comment in the article is actually mine. I messaged Brian. 4:30 is right where it's like a sweet spot because if I did 3 or 6, it was hitting the side or the bottom, the front of the laser. So the side gantry or the front of the laser. So 4:30 is ideal for it. Actually, let me see if I can grab it. I might have it.
And did you crimp the end of the hose or the end of the brass?
Yeah, I crimped the end of the brass for sure. And I definitely saw an improvement.
Did it, because it fanned it out a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. It gives you a sheet versus just a gush of it. Yeah, give me one second. I'll be right back. I'm going to see if I can grab it.
Brian, you're on mute.
There we go. Yeah. I didn't think about trying that nozzle with that HR head because I don't use it very much, but if it would keep that stuff right there from happening, that could be a big benefit.
Yep.
Because that right there is almost you have to stop your work and clean the head and put it back in and resume, or it'll drag it and get everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And
Have you tried any release agents? Like maybe silicone spray or Teflon. We used to use some silicone-based oil for fusers, and you could shine a doorknob or a seat up with that thing, and somebody would slide out of it. I mean, it was crazy how it would release surface tension. But I don't know if anybody's tried anything like that on them or not.
I haven't, but I used a rag with a damp, got it damp and with a little bit of LA Awesome on it just to wipe it. As you run in a bigger job and don't want to go in and reset and adjust your focus, right? So just run it under it with it in place and got
Yeah.
it, and then started it back up and realized it was still slightly moist around the cone because I saw that nice little poof of LA Awesome smoke. You can the lens still works, but yeah, you can look inside of it and tell it damaged it a little bit, but it's still working
Oh,
at the moment. But
yeah.
it's probably gonna need some replacing.
So this is my setup. So I've got the line coming in for air, and then I've got a Y in here, and then this is
Mhm.
what I was saying on the side there. I placed the elbow. This has got a nice little
Mhm.
adjustment there, and then obviously this has an adjustment on it itself as well.
Right.
And that's the setup I have. So you can probably
Uh,
see it's pointed.
Yeah. That's cool. If you took that outside and put that air tube in your mouth, you'd probably get arrested.
Yeah, yeah, right. They're like, what
What is
what
that
are you
thing?
doing?
No, he's in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's legal up there, right?
Yeah, some things are, but not
That
all.
that looks like something you'd smoke kryptonite out of.
That looked like something Hunter Biden had his Parmesan cheese in.
So yeah, so this guy, it works pretty good. I've been meaning to actually use some really thin Sharpie to draw lines on it, so I know exactly where the alignment is when I
Oh,
have
to
to
index
realign
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can just, because this was a huge pain in the butt to get dialed in like this,
Hmm.
and every
You can
time
always
I've got
engrave
to,
on
yeah, true, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Only you
I need
had
a laser.
something
I'm
to
gonna need a
engrave
fiber
with.
just for this.
it. Yeah. Well, you could do it. It's anodized. You could do it with
Yeah.
yours. And I think the best way is just to pulse it and make it stay on and just hold it and just run it under it real fast just to make the line. I'm kidding, of
Yeah.
course.
But yeah, no, it's this thing's been working great, and I use these dials a whole lot, and I'm starting to take notes in my project, archives of how much juice I used on each side of these, and yeah, it works awesome. I mean, you can see I haven't cleaned this one yet,
Now, let
but
me ask you this. When you adjust that needle valve on the nozzle itself, do you
Mm-hmm.
see a change in pressure reflected on your gauge?
so
Because of the
I
flow.
do if this isn't wide open. If this is
Okay.
wide open, I don't see it kick back any pressure. And that's why I went with this style Y instead of a T, so it more perfectly splits it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that definitely helps. I consider doing a T sideways here, so that the nozzle always got less pressure and this got more, and
Right.
then I can just shut this off entirely if I really wanted to. But I
Mhm.
found that it created a bit of turbulence in the air going into the nozzle, so when I shut this off, this was shaking a little bit
Gotcha.
from that air turbulence. I didn't like that, so I worried that it would actually mess with the laser
Yeah. Matter of fact, I
lens.
think in that somebody, I don't know who point was it. You were the one that came up with that. Is that what I put in that article? Uh, which one was that? The quantifying
Oh yes,
air surface
yeah,
pressures. I think that was your stuff. So
yep,
yeah. So that
yep, yep,
was
yep.
extremely helpful. How the T acts different than. See, they're seeing a pressure differential here too between the
Yeah,
T and the
so
Y.
those pictures aren't mine, but I
Right.
remember you and I did speak about it when I was putting
Right.
this in and we were testing. Yeah, for
And you
sure.
were seeing the same thing
Yep,
with the different fittings. Yeah. So that's cool to
absolutely.
vary. So awesome.
So where did you get all those pieces and parts?
So same company, Light Object, that sells this jig here, this the actual
Yep.
nozzle, will sell the black adapter here, and it fits perfect into the Thunder lens tube. I keep trying to say laser head, but it's not correct. Lens tube. But yeah, I just got all this from that. This actually bought an air hose kit because I was going to reroute some of the stuff anyway, and this came in the kit,
This
so I used that.
that kit.
There you go. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep, yep.
Here's a link, Chris. I'll put in the chat, and this has all the pieces you need and a description of how it works and how to put it together and all that good stuff. I'll put that in the link so you can save it. But it's called, if you just want to search for it, pressure switch implementation. Yeah, you like my titles? I mean, is that sterile or what? But it's got all that information in there about it, about all the stuff that you need.
Did you
I might
change
not
the
have mentioned.
Amazon link for the meter, for the sensor? Because it used to be
Um,
the vacuum one, and then
yeah, I sent it straight to the
yeah,
SMC
yep,
site. Yeah,
yep, yep, yep.
and yeah, that's the cheapest. I've seen them for like $130 on some
I did
places.
too, yeah. And
So,
SMC has been great. I mean, I bought that one. I'm considering buying a second one. They were super helpful
mhm.
for sure.
And matter of fact, talking about SMC, let me see if I have an article. I do. I got an article for everything. They went to the SMC air solenoids, and there's those new connectors you were talking about.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and
So yeah, actually, that's a great picture. If you take the red and black out of there and you undo that connector, you can recrimp the terminals to connect onto that meter, and then
mhm,
just pop it right back in, and you're good to go.
right. So, and then that's the old style. And there's a direction arrow on the old style relays, and I would assume that that has to be honored. But the SMC ones look like they don't matter. It
Universal.
looks like it's a different,
Mhm.
a different seat.
How new
you
is
know.
new?
I didn't know that these were being put in there until about 2 months ago.
Okay.
So
So mine definitely doesn't have them then. So if they ever go bad, I can. Do these still require up to 40 psi, or can they go beyond that?
we have raised it to 55.
With the new ones,
No, across the
with
board. They
everything.
kept,
Okay.
yeah, even on the old ones, they
Because
did some more testing.
I've
Because
got
see,
my air dryer
yeah,
as my pressure set, and then I've
yeah.
got that locked at 40, so I'll raise it to 55.
Yeah, you can raise it to 55. They did some more testing on them. We used to be at 100, and then they dropped it to 80, and then we were seeing a lot of part failures on the relays, the seats and stuff, especially staying pressurized over time. And then it depresses, the seat, and then it starts to leak, and then it just blows out. So they kept testing and testing, and then they got us down to 40, and people didn't really like that, so now they've raised it back up.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
but at
honestly,
least they're doing that stuff.
at 40 wide open, that's more than enough pressure for anything.
Typically anything over 50 is not, there's no real benefit. I'll get up to 45 or 50 if I'm doing, half-inch ply or something like that. But you're right, there is a diminishing point of return, on how
Yeah.
much you actually use.
I mean, I
So
charge it, but I can get through half-inch with the standard lens with a single pass
I prefer
at
that over
40.
the 4 actually, because you got your air 2 millimeters away from the surface.
Right.
Just about all of it is going right into that kerf and ejecting
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Because you talk about cleaning that kerf out, and if you think about it, that looks like a big fire in there. It's just smoke and garbage and debris and particulates, and this is a beam, and it can't see
Yeah.
through it. So keeping that
Yeah.
kerf clean is
Yeah.
a huge deal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for a lot
For
of
sure.
reasons,
But it does come pretty charred though. When I do a single pass like that, it's
yeah,
pretty black. Just got to
it
run it
will be.
with a sander.
So yeah, and I've seen people dial in and get a nice golden edge, maybe not on half-inch, standard ply, and you can do it. It just depends on the settings and the materials, I guess. I'm not very good at it. Most of my stuff looks burnt. And then, if anybody says anything, well, it's a laser. I'm literally burning through it. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
So,
I was shocked that you could go through 2x4.
mhm. Yeah, I cut a pressure treated 2x4 the other day just to see if it would do it.
Oh,
Took a
it'll
few
do it.
passes. Took like 6
Yeah.
passes, and it
Were
was
you
ugly.
worried about the pressure treated chemicals in there?
Nah, I had the lid shut on this particular
Uh,
occasion. So, and I don't know what's in them now, but I know whatever it is, it's not the good stuff anymore, because now that stuff only lasts about 10 years. It used to last
yeah.
20.
The good stuff.
Yeah, the poison.
Carcinogens.
Yeah.
Yeah. How dare you take my carcinogens away? We all got to die of something, right?
So cool. Well, trying to think if there's anything else. Nothing new on my end. Just the same old stuff, just more and more clients. But
I bet. Jeez.
yeah, we're getting more and more and more and more. But the service load is not really been super affected. The volumes are going up, proportionally, with the increase in the numbers of clients. So I don't see anything out of the ordinary.
So no
Because
decline in
there for a
quality is what you're saying.
while, every time a power supply would fail, I'd go, oh my gosh, another power supply failed. And, they're like, yeah, but you don't have 10 customers now. You have 2,000. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
if you put it in perspective. But we try to watch all that stuff. But everything's been going pretty smooth. Most of it's logistics, the same old stuff you see on the things, and dialing in and just becoming familiar with the machine. So
I really like that Thunder headquarters is on Facebook groups and they do reply every so often.
mhm.
Because, like I said, my 63, I had an acrylic fire in it, and it did not shut off because I thought that the actual heat sensor was on the actual gantry that moves back and forth, not on the X bar.
Mhm.
It's in the middle of the X bar. My fire was in the bottom left corner. Of
Mhm.
course, it's not going to shut off. It doesn't sense it. It's a 63 for goodness sake. Put
Yeah,
4 of those suckers in there. Put 5 of those suckers in there. Like,
run them across there. Yeah.
yeah, like, come on. He's like, oh, I didn't think of that. I'm like, yeah. Or put a sensor in the actual port. That was my theory, actually. I meant to mention that. Put a heat sensor in the port, and if it gets exponentially hotter than when the job started, there's something wrong. Like, that's supposed to be getting cooler,
That's a
not
good point
hotter.
because that's where a lot of that air is going to be going. That's,
Right.
that's not, that's something to think about. I might have to run that up the flagpole.
Yeah. There you go. Shoot me a
Uh,
fiver now. I'll give you enough of those ideas. Well, we'll build up to a fiber, like at least a 50% off discount.
I'll have to defer you directly to China if you want to talk about intellectual properties.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but
you're gonna lose that one. China's good at getting intellectual property.
Oh yeah, but not good at honoring them. Just saying. Cool. Yeah. No, I think that would be great to put that sensor right in line, because all that heat's going somewhere anyway. You're pumping it,
Yeah.
and it should be easy to say, okay, well, temperature when the job started, and if it goes 10 degrees above that or 5 degrees above that, you're good. Like that's going to be an actual stop point.
Huh. We'll have to see about that. Yeah, I never thought about the 63 because they are mounted. Yeah, on the
Yeah, right square in the middle of
right in the
it.
middle.
Like,
Which
what is this doing?
yeah, and eventually it would get up to that temperature.
Oh,
So,
like eventually, yeah.
so
Yeah, it's gonna burn up. It's gonna burn a lot of good stuff in the process.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like belts are gone. There goes your gasket around your glass.
right. So
Well,
yeah,
Brian, I almost beat the dog licking episode.
how's that?
The wife come out here to the edge of the shop, and she wasn't properly dressed, and that's what a couple of cameras went out for because she started walking out here, listening to her, and I just shook my head like, and I couldn't find the button fast enough. Otherwise, everybody would have got a nice show.
When you first said we missed something, I was going to say Pixar. It didn't happen, but nah, that's okay. You can hang on.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't. Yeah.
So. That's funny.
That would have been a good one. That might have been a camera stopping one. I could see Brian like, well, you need to unhit record.
So, yeah, and I pulled up that fire article. There's that thing in there. This one burned for quite a while, but it didn't have a sensor in it at all. That was, yeah, that machine didn't come standard with them at that time. It was a little bit older. But yeah, the glass, I mean, and I think that's why they put the sensor in there is because this happens. It can burn for 7 or 8 minutes and no one knows. So I think that's why the flame sensor. I don't know that it's necessarily such early warning that you catch it in the incipient stage, but rather at least it lets you know before, because that fire would have to get bad enough to like warp something or shatter the glass before it would ever, come out of the container.
Honestly, I think the first thing that would go would actually be your exhaust duct. Like my exhaust duct goes up the wall. So if it's that flexible tubing, that will melt eventually.
Yeah. And I didn't think to ask them about what happened to the exhaust system. I do know that it was functional for at least a lot of this because there's no smoke in there with the fire because it's being evacuated.
Oh, it never leaked smoke out of the back or the side, so it was still functional. But
I think I'm gonna email them back and ask them about the exhaust system because that's a good point and it was never brought up.
Yeah, I think that would be the next thing to really melt and fall apart. And for me, that would mean that disconnects, and now there's smoke everywhere. I think that would be the first thing that kind of gives it away.
Yeah, and these guys were back up and
still
running.
there.
It's still there. A little bit.
Jesus.
I don't know if I'd use it, but it's
not
there.
in great shape, but it didn't pop. I'm kind of shocked.
Well, for the extent of the fire, it was minimal damage. I mean, relatively speaking, they were up and running again in a week.
Wonder if that lens is still good.
I don't know.
Well, if they kept the air on.
Well, the air hose did melt. That's gone.
So.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, cool. Has anybody got anything else?
I got
so much, guys. Oh, you got.
Yeah, I got a question in terms of for those of y'all that cut acrylic, um, what are you doing for where you get the, I guess, the reflection back off of honeycomb? So, yeah, the flashback. So, I've cut some bigger stuff where I got some little magnets and I set it up, and I'm getting ready to start cutting a lot of small stuff, right? So I don't really want to put it on the blades and have it drop down. So I wasn't sure if it had any solutions or come up with a way to do that. I looked at building almost like one of the little pin tables with the nails up and doing something like that. So wasn't sure if anyone's had any different ideas.
I've used magnets to stand them off,
Yeah.
or in some cases pieces of scrap, but I leave the masking on the bottom. Sometimes that's
Yeah.
enough. Sometimes that's enough to, you know, to mitigate that where you don't even have to stand it off. But otherwise, I'll
Yeah.
stand it off with magnets and then stack magnets on top of those so that it'll hold it in place as well as stand it off.
Yeah, and one of the issues, I looked at doing that, standing it off like that, but almost start cutting a lot of smaller stuff. And my concern was, if you got let's say it's
Flipping
an
up.
inch gap, well, when
Mhm.
that smaller stuff drops, you've got a flame going under there. So now
So
you cutting the piece next to it, whether it starts damaging the one that just dropped.
I had exactly that exact issue. We did a ton of little snowflakes like that.
Yep, that's what I'm looking at
Um,
doing: snowflake, Christmas ornaments, starting getting ready for
exactly.
that next craft season.
So what ended up happening is I use Deep Nest IO, and the deeper you nest, the more material you save, which is great. But the deeper you nest, the more you have issues with that. So I tried a few things. What I ended up doing was I ended up creating a sections, like purposely putting sections in the design that will not be cut, and that's where I put my magnets, and that will create kind of a honeycomb structure where it will leave intact acrylic where the actual cutout will drop that half inch, but the overall material will be left over. And you usually have enough leftover material to do that anyway, to space it out a little bit instead of being a huge chunk of material on the side. And that ended up giving us a great result.
Yeah, but you don't have any issues. So, like, let's say you had two of the snowflakes side by side. When the one cuts and you're cutting the other one, let's say it's a quarter of an inch away, right? You don't have any issue when you're cutting through that with any of the flame or the stuff, cutting
No,
what's dropped down. Okay, that
no,
was
not
my
at all.
concern. Was
So this drops down exactly where it stands. Actually, I was surprised because this is not very much surface area to hold up the whole snowflake, but it does. Until that last little bit is cut and it goes completely loose, it does not fall. Another thing is if you keep the masking on, the masking will help with some of the smoke that you might get on there. So it might look smoky when you take it out, but the second you take the masking off, it's good.
Yeah,
There's
that
no
was my
marking on it.
concern was the bits dropping below it, and then when I'm cutting
Yeah.
the stuff adjacent to it,
Just make sure
every
that
time
you
you cut acrylic, you get a bit of that fire and flare on the bottom side.
don't skimp too much on the power. Like don't go right to the bleeding edge because sometimes the material that's masking either side will hold on just barely, and that will be enough for it to fall and tilt. And when that's tilted, then it could actually go into the zone beneath another piece and get marked up from the laser going through it. So don't skimp on the power.
Yep, I didn't buy a 130 to skimp on the power.
Hey, there you go, my man. 130.
I was gonna say
If you're cutting
I
that
cut
thin stuff,
everything.
have you thought about the HR head for cutting that 1/8 inch?
Ooh, I hadn't thought of that.
Might be an option. Your
I like
your
that.
field, your focal your focal range is very narrow, but I mean that'd be such a small curve.
Same, yeah.
I
And
like
that
that a
beam
lot. I'm
signature was
curious now.
nice.
Now you make me want to test to see what the sides will look like. I mean, I got this pretty good, but I feel like it could get better. And I'm curious if the HR head would give me better results on the edges being, you know, that ever sought after flamed edge.
Hmm.
It really kills me, by the way, to have a 130 and have to slow it down that much to get that flamed edge. I bought a 130 to go fast,
Yeah,
and to have to be able to have to slow it down to whatever it
yeah.
is.
That's Yeah, that's more
5 or
dependent
10.
on the melting point of that acrylic than,
Yeah.
than anything. Yeah.
Yep. To slow it down to 5 or 10 millimeters a second kills me.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah,
it
you
will
can
do a
always
nice
always
drain.
flame polish afterwards too. You cut it
Yeah.
out real quick and then hit it with a torch. But yeah,
Yeah, hit it with some map
Yeah.
gas. But you really can get a nice, smooth, flame polished edge, though, if you do let it do its thing. It really does do a good job if you.
Yeah,
beautiful.
dude, I watched those videos you linked me and from Thunder, and I'm like, I'm calling BS, dude. Like that is super. Like that is a mirror finish. Like just like completely no marks. Like I don't know, dude. That is like I got it pretty good,
Yeah.
but that's got to be either my laser's too high power or I don't know. I cannot
Yeah.
get it that good. Like
Yeah.
from that
Slower,
video, you
slower
can't
and less
tell what's
air.
in front. Yeah, from that video, you can't tell what the front or the side of that piece was that they cut. That's how polished it was.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It's
And by
crazy.
trying to go less air, that's how my freaking acrylic fire started.
Yeah. Yeah. But all right, guys. Well, it's we still got 5 minutes, I think. Or 7 or something. If anybody has anything else, feel free to shout, and then I've got to take a call in a minute. So
I got one other one kind of
Yeah.
along similar lines, but with like 1/8" Baltic birch plywood, so kind of similar concerns. Using magnets to stand that off to keep from getting flashback as well.
That's a lot more forgiving too. Like even if you do get flashback, a very quick
It can
sand, like
sand it,
just
yeah.
yeah, very 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 light, like orbital sander pass, you're good to go. Yeah, I don't even stand off my Baltic birch.
a lot of people are saying baby wipes work really well on birch for getting rid of that residue. Have you
Ooh,
tried that?
I have not yet. No.
Huh. I've got hundreds of baby wipes here, but I don't ever cut anything. So I'll have to find
You should
something and cut it and try it.
cut some stuff up, man.
Right, right. Well, cool, guys. I guess I'll jump off here then. And
I
there's
did
been a
have a
recommendation that I
final
try to put some
question.
keywords in there in the
Oh,
videos in the description. So I'm gonna go and hopefully the GoToMeeting Smart Notes works good enough that I can just pull, copy and paste some stuff out of the transcript.
one quick question for you or anyone else here that might have an input. Have you guys had any experience either cutting or engraving wood that has been stained?
Not me. No, all of my stuff is all natural or
I have
engineered.
very
Yeah.
little. Just started playing with that. I just did a sign, and I just ran normal settings on it.
Okay. Because that's what I want to do. Instead of engraving then staining, I want to stain the whole freaking beautiful sheet and then engrave it and move on with my life.
But the thing is, you're going to have to lacquer too, because
Yeah, seal it.
if you don't, your stains, you're going to screw yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So this to give a little more insight, this wood would be sitting behind acrylic permanently. So I don't think I'm gonna lacquer it, but I do want to just stain it, laser it, smash
No,
acrylic onto it.
But the problem is, if
no,
you've got any
the
smoke
smoke.
damage
Yeah,
with
it's going to affect your stain.
Oh,
and
that
if your
is a good
stain's not
point.
completely cured out, if you've got
Yeah.
anything left in that, you're going to screw yourself. I do finishing for a living. That's what I
See,
do. So
this is why I asked these questions because I didn't think of that. You don't know what
just
you
do
don't
it.
know, right?
Just do a piss coat. Excuse the language. Just do a very, very light coat. This is what we call it.
Mist coat.
That's jargon. That's
And
okay.
it's literally what it is. It's just
Industry
a
standard.
seal. Because when we was like have a job at our shop and we were trying to get out the end of the day, we would just run that real super light coat just to seal our stains.
Yeah.
So the next morning we would just buff it out and then run
So
full
like
top coats.
a Rust-Oleum, clear coat over it.
Yeah, if you just get like a Wacko or something, even just a real light lacquer, and just literally just go over it really fast, that's going to seal your stain enough that you be able to wipe it off, or be able to use like 1,000 grit sandpaper to come back across it really fast.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really good to know. I'm glad I asked.
One other thing along those lines too, where it helps is if you're masking stuff and you're going to color fill it, right? Same thing as so when you go engrave through the masking, if you hit it with a lacquer there, when you go to color fill it, you don't get it bleeding under your, so you get a lot crisper edges and stuff if you're color filling.
Okay, gotcha. So mask it, engrave it, lacquer it, let it dry, and then color fill so it doesn't
Yep.
bleed into the wood.
Yep, and it gives great results that way.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, I guess I'm gonna jump off. It's
Thanks so much.
3:59. This was an awesome one. We got a lot of good stuff in here, so I'll try to make some
I've been
notes in the
meaning to
description.
jump on, and I keep forgetting, so I've got all these things built up.
Well,
Sorry, I kind of
I'll
dominated
tell
this.
you what. Next week you're gonna have to do the same thing. Matter of fact, if you do this again, I'm just gonna let you run the show, and I'm gonna sit here because this was fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad. Awesome.
So,
Yeah,
all right,
hopefully I
guys.
remember for next week.
All right.
Have
Sounds
a good one.
All right. Take care.
Thanks. Have a good one.